Welcome back to another episode of Orange Fitness Radio. Today I'm joined by Nathan Johnson, aka the Hitman, who's one of our coaches here at RNT Fitness, and we tackle another number of questions that were asked within our client Facebook group. The first one was regarding sleep and how to improve the quality of your sleep. The second one was around reverse dieting, the different applications of it, and how you might use different strategies depending on your psychology. And the third one was about how to maximize your check-in, which is arguably the most important part of the coaching process. It's where we use your feedback to make the necessary tweaks to the plan to help keep guiding you towards your goals. So I really hope you enjoy this one. Thanks. Today I'm joined by the Hitman, Nathan Johnson. We've got him on the line, and I thought we'd answer a couple of client questions we've had in the Facebook group. And the first one is relating to sleep and, ways to improve the quality of deep sleep and maximizing your recovery through different sleep strategies. And this is something that, a lot of clients overlook, but myself included and probably Nathan as well, right?
Absolutely.
It's something that we don't really pay enough attention to. We train hard, we eat well, but if it's a choice between working an extra hour at night or going to sleep earlier, more times than not, I usually pick the former, and there are repercussions. And so if you are low on sleep, you need to maximize the time you do have to sleep. So I think Nathan gave some really good answers there. So if you'd like to go through that, I think that'd be really useful for the listeners.
Yeah. So ultimately, whether it's deep sleep or the other cycles of sleep, just getting better quality and focusing on the quality, tracking it, and understanding what your normal is based on your life and what you can manage, what your normal waking times are, etc. But I think the most important thing is in general lifestyle, and to improve your sleep will be to get some sort of relaxation going, or what we like to call parasympathetic activity. And I got this from a guy called Luke Hoffman at a seminar, and basically he was saying that to stimulate the parasympathetic as much as you can, you want to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is responsible for that activity. So doing things that will stimulate this may increase the likelihood of you relaxing before you sleep, and then you have a better chance of getting better sleep if you are relaxed. The same reason why people say cut coffee out before 2 p.m. is because it stimulates that sympathetic activity, that those release of those norepinephrine and noradrenaline and stuff like that that'll keep you more excitable. So getting parasympathetic or relaxed is a really, really just a really good start for everybody. So there are some general tips like gargling before bed, which is quite funny in starts, but actually it's really effective. Another thing of that is obviously stimulating the gag reflex, but that isn't as pretty as just gargling. So try as you will, but I think gargling wins over the gag reflex.
Okay, what's the deal with gargling? What are we doing here? Just gargling water in our mouth?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm a key for efficiency, so I do it with my mouthwash. So as a bit of a ritual, brush your teeth and then mouthwash and then just gargle. Generally, I don't know how long it is, but I've done it for 10 to 15 seconds, and that generally is enough. And you just make sure that you do it enough of the time. The same with that is stimulating that same system by eating something bitter. So for me personally, I tried lemon and ginger, and both kind of do the same thing. So either having those both together is actually a good thing, or what's
the thinking behind that?
So it just stimulates the same thing.
Oh, just
stimulates the vagus nerve. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Cool. And then stuff.
So lemon, ginger. What are you doing with that? You're just squeezing it into tea or water, and then just drinking it.
You just want that bitterness to be tasted by the mouth. Okay. Whichever way that you get it. Me personally, I'm a creature of easiness, so I just bite the lemon. Or bite the ginger.
So you're just buying a lemon before you go to sleep.
Yeah, that's the bitterness aspect. So that's why I prefer the gargling now over the lemon, because you need 7 lemons or whatever. But the gargling is much more cost effective and easy. Getting your room colder, the usuals of reducing the light before bed. And then, if you're sharing...
Let's just expand on the light thing. So Are you referring here to electronics in particular, or are you talking more about trying to create that Batcave environment?
I mean, it's both. I mean, if you can create a routine that gets rid of light before bed, you're more than likely going to be able to downregulate, have more time, on your own, get that kind of relaxation going. If you're always stimulated by this light, whatever light it is, then the ability for either your mind or, your body to turn off or like start unwinding, it will never happen. You're going to be stimulated by whatever you're looking at, whether it's Instagram, and there's loads of things coming out now about the the dopamine release when you scroll through Instagram, and the feeling of wanting more and wanting to like find out what's next on the scroll. There's actually some really good research into that now. So if you're on your phone getting that type of dopamine, that excitability, that type of response, you're never going to unwind. And an example of that is I quit Instagram for about 2 weeks and I gave myself a break from it. I came back and I opened it at 8 p.m. and I was literally buzzing from opening Instagram and scrolling on it because I got such a dopamine response. I mean, that's anecdotal and there's no research to prove that that's happened to me. But I was literally buzzing from opening Instagram, and now, we're all accustomed to that. We're now trained and have behaviors around it that we don't see it, but when we go away from something and then come back to it, it's much more of a powerful response, and I see in that personally.
Yeah, and I'd also say not only just before bed, but also in the morning. So I find if I look at my phone in the morning when I wake up and I start responding to messages, I'm in a reactive state all day long, right? I'm always wanting more, so I can't stop checking my phone. I can't stop checking different apps. But if I stay away from it in that morning period, at least in the first 3-4 hours in the day, then I'm not in such a reactive state all day long. But what I do find is, as the day goes on, it gets worse and worse, right?
Yeah.
Your willpower resources get drained. And by the end of the day, it's the same reason why you cheat more than you diet at night, right? You just have less willpower at nighttime. So you find yourself chasing those dopamine satisfactions a lot more towards the end of the day.
Absolutely. And there's actually some good research on that. I don't know. Someone told me recently about the science behind that level of willpower and where it comes from in the brain and and stuff like that. I'll have to send that to you and put it in the show notes. But there's definitely some good research on like the level of you have of willpower is actually something in the brain.
Yeah. So, and how can you? What kind of improvements do you have? Can you make for it? Because I've got my own ideas on this, and a lot of it's related to that decision fatigue, right?
Yeah. We have the same kind of principle, and this is like, make sure. And actually, your recent podcast with Akash Desai, he was saying about how he gets everything done before his day, so he has less to decide upon for the rest of the day. I think that goes back to you have this limited reserve, and if you've used it all by 10 a.m., then God help you for the rest of the day. But for me personally and for the clients that I do, getting everything done and having less of a decision around training, nutrition, what time you're going to eat, what time you're going to do X, Y, and Z. If your behaviors aren't ingrained, then you will need a certain strategy to get over that. Whereas, we're quite lucky, or some people are quite lucky, is that they just have innate behavior that it doesn't need willpower for, whereas some people have a lot more drains on their reserves when they're firstly learning something new or going through something new.
Yeah, and I seriously believe that the more you can kind of standardize the non-creative components in your day, so even to things like clothes, on your day-to-day work basis. I mean, that's why uniform works so well, right? Because it takes that decision out. But your meals especially, and I think that's a really big one with compliance on the diet, is having that set meal plan. It's something you spoke about recently, actually, on the team call, and you said how when people go off that set meal plan approach and they try and be flexible, everything just goes down the drain, right?
Yeah,
in a lot of cases when they just go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, and for some people, it doesn't start straight away. It's like that building and building and building. Like they'll go off a meal plan and they'll think it's fantastic because they get more choices of food. They might not necessarily be if it fits your macros, but they'll be having different choices. I get to have salmon on a Tuesday instead of chicken or turkey or white fish, or I get to have steak on a Friday. And then slowly but surely, it comes around and their behaviors start kicking in the reason why they came to you in the first place. And then they get more fatigued and they get more anxious about the decisions that they're making. And then, whether they make a poor choice or a good choice will obviously affect their hunger, their appetite, their sleep, their energy levels, the food quality that they're using. It will all have a play, and then it'll become all too much at some point if you don't have that behavior that's already set.
Yeah, and I think some people will say, "Oh, maybe it's because they were restricted on a set meal plan, right? And they just needed to break away." But I'd actually argue that, if when it's all standardized, it just comes back to having less decisions. There's less decisions to make, right? And so when the freedom's there, and there's so many decisions to make, they just get overwhelmed, right? You get overwhelmed. You've got no willpower, so you just go off track. I don't think it's a matter of suddenly having a massive amount of freedom. It's more just you have so many more decisions to make on a daily basis. And when you counter that with just how busy everyone's life is now, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I still, to this day, it still happens to me sometimes. Obviously, if you've listened to the podcast with me previously, you know that I love a bit of food and I'm a bit of a fatty at heart.
Yeah.
And I still get caught with stuff like this when I, go from prepping my own meals to then, okay, I'm gonna do 5 days where I just get, I get takeaways, or I just go out for dinner. Nowhere, like I'm not going to McDonald's, but I'm just going to like a place called We Grill in London, or I go to, Eat or Pret, and I get good decisions. I'm hitting my calories, whatever my goal is. But even that decision of what am I going to have for breakfast or what am I going to have for lunch today adds on top of the already stuff that you're already dealing with, and that could tip someone over the edge.
Exactly. Yeah. So, back to the point of sleep. Another thing you can add to the phone bit is just putting on airplane mode. So, we've talked about reducing light. I think the biggest thing is people just keep their phones by their bedside and they continue to respond to it throughout the night. Like I've seen it where people have it on vibrate and they'll look at it as they're sleeping. And it just makes no sense to me. And that's probably one of the biggest causes of bad quality sleep and poor productivity overall, right?
Yeah, the reactive nature to people on their phones. It's crazy. It doesn't matter whether it's in the day, in the night. The reactivity, you are reacting to a stimulus and then responding. The best thing I ever did was take off my notifications on my phone, so I look at my phone when I want to, when I've got time. I mean, some may say that's unproductive, but actually, I'm doing what I want with my time.
Yeah, that's exactly. Actually, I'm the same as well, and I think it's the best way to be because that way you're in control of what you're doing and what you're allowing yourself to have access to. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, you can see a notification, and if you can see the start of a message that might be bad, for example, that can suddenly trigger a downward spiral in your head, right? And then you look at that message when you shouldn't have looked at it, and then things spiral down from there. So, no, 100%, I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Continuing with the sleep, you had a couple more tips.
Oh yeah, so just
tangent right there.
Sorry, yeah. And as you get further into a diet, sleep will become a bit more of an important factor. And people will often turn to diet drinks during this time of cravings, needs, low energy, and that some diet drinks have caffeine in themselves. So don't think that just because it's a diet drink and it's not coffee or tea, you aren't exempt from that kind of. That's that same principle that whilst you may have to drink a little bit more to get the same amount of caffeine from coffees or teas, you're still stimulating that sympathetic activity, and you're kind of lessening your chances to sleep well.
Yeah.
So I personally have a trial and error with that, and I think leaving it the same as teas and coffees, it works very well. And then
go on.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, and then the last one is. People have to share beds with people. Obviously, if you're married or you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever you have, you're affected by their sleep. So if they're snoring or they're the ones that move in the middle of the night, it's of benefit to probably share this podcast with them and get their sleep better so you sleep better.
Yeah. Got it. And what are your thoughts on supplements with sleep? Anything useful or...
I mean, there's thinking or the thinking so you can kind of then unwind for bed. I mean, generally you want to use the things that are free first. I kind of tried them all, but you want the free things. And then if you need to move into supplementation, then fantastic, go into it. But I would definitely maximize your routine, your sleep, via parasympathetic activity, headspace, even before you even look at supplements.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, I think that's great on sleep, and I think there's a lot of tips there that people can take from that and implement it if they're struggling with sleep. Let's shift gears now, because at RNT right now, we've, as always, we're churning out a lot of transformations, right? That's just how we do here. But I think in the month of September and October, we've got probably a little bit more than normal, right?
We're
coming to the end of their dieting phases that they started maybe around April, May, June time. So we've had a lot of questions regarding reverse dieting, transitioning after a hard diet, what to do next, how to approach your training, your nutrition. So I thought we'll spend a little segment today on the best ways to approach this and your experiences, because as the hitman, you've churning out a lot of transformations. So I want to know what you're all doing with your clients in that period after the transformation to make them not only, have a healthier relationship, healthier, body overall, but maintain a healthy relationship with food and general habits that they might have acquired in the dieting phase.
Yeah, I mean, for me, regardless if you be going to like slow or fast reverse dieting, the first thing that you have to kind of get in order is, the relationship with food, or the food behaviors, or the routines that you have on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people will come to personal trainers and just change things for that desired result and not consider that it needs to be like that for the rest of either their lives. If they want a set specific goal, the likes of meal prepping, people will do that during the transformation period and then expect that they can go back to eating their mum's cooking and then getting their dinner from prep. Making decisions like that and not going, what got you there potentially can keep you there, or keep you in the same type of, bracket of scale weight, or, the things like food behaviors are also a good one. So before we even look at reverse dieting, your goal would be to get those food behaviors a bit better, looking at keeping the same routine that you've got, keeping that prepping of food, making sure that, the behaviors that you're making aren't negative. So an example of this would be making sure that when you do finish your diet and you are going for those cheat meals, or you're going for those extra calories, you're getting them from a period or a place or something that is outside of your house, or you're going away out to a restaurant for that cheat meal. Because there's nothing worse than creating habits such as walking past Tesco's, getting 6 cookies, or walking past Tesco's, getting a pack of biscuits and then bringing them home. There's loads of research into your environment will produce your behaviors, or will keep your behaviors. So I had an instance recently where someone's like, I can't go into Sainsbury's without buying something, and it was chorizo sausage. So this person couldn't go into Tesco or any supermarket unless they were going to buy that sausage, and then they would carry on with their day. And what they've done is they've made habits or behaviors and associations with the supermarket, which I think would be a lot more prevalent when you've just finished your dieting, when you've got a heightened sense of smell. You're hungry, you're craving, and then you go and create these associations. Even before you think about increasing your food or increasing that, whether I'm going to put on muscle, you need to have a period of where, you get you're self-aware of the things that you're currently doing that you need to do to kind of either maintain what you've got or stop the negative aspects of things like that coming about.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it you mentioned about people expecting themselves to be able to maintain their gains while eating their mum's cooking. I think a lot of it comes down to, when they go into a transformation, they've got to understand this is not just a short-term fix. It's going to be a lifestyle change, right? And the habits that they're building in those 12, 16, 20, whatever the time frame is, they've got they should stick for life. And I also believe that the way you feel during a transformation is so much better, right? You feel more productive. You feel more focused at work. Your digestive system's better. And a lot of it comes from having those healthier food habits, right? So when you finish transformation or that phase of, whatever it is, the fat loss bit, you should want to keep it going in order to maintain those aspects of your life, right? Because people always complain, once they've, they eat bad meals, that they don't feel good. And that should probably be a sign that, it's not what you should be eating, right? On a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, your goal during that period would be to listen to your body and get that whether it is subjective data or objective data, that can be another conversation. But in my opinion, you are listening to that subjective data of either the lethargy after you eat dairy, or the sensitivity that you might have, or whether you're bloated after certain foods. I think that is a really good one, because people will push through that, even myself included, just to outweigh their cravings.
Yeah, man. I think self-awareness is huge in general food understanding and understanding how your body reacts to different foods. When people talk about food intolerances and how they should overcome it, if they do have any, I think a lot of it is down to self-awareness and just paying attention to what your body says. So, if you feel bad after having dairy, then you probably shouldn't be having dairy, right? But if you feel good with having dairy, then go ahead. There's no good or bad food per se. It's more how your body responds to it and what you feel good of, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, there is no testing for that at the moment that we can say that is inaccurate. People say to me, we had that conversation with one of our clients on a group thread, and he was saying, there must be something wrong with me. I need to get an intolerance test. It's like, don't waste your money. Just stop eating like an idiot. And and for him, that's what was happening. He was like eating highly processed foods, and they were also high in calories. So whether it was the fact that his digestive system didn't like it, or the fact that it was high in calories, remain that to be decided. But that's one aspect of it, and getting the what your body should be feeling like. Don't get me wrong, we're not asking you here to do everything that you would have had to do during your transformation. You don't have to do the 20k steps or the 4 times a week cardio that you ended up on, but the principles that got you there, whether it's meal planning, whether it was daily activity from steps, or daily cardio, or weight training 3 to 4 times a week, those are the kind of set principles that we instill that are kind of base level, should be happening anyway, or potentially could be happening.
And they should be happening, and they just should be tapered down. Yeah, so, absolutely. For example, say you end up on 20,000 steps, right? Then the following week after the shoot, you might do 15,000, and then you might go down to 12 and a half. Then you might end up around 8 to 10 after 4 or 5 weeks, right? It doesn't need to be at that 20,000 limit for the whole time, and you could probably get away with 8 to 10,000 and be pretty much close to where you were at your peak in terms of condition, right? But it is important that you have that tapering effect, and you don't just go from 20k to 0. You taper it down accordingly, and stay at a good level of 8 to 10,000, which is, I'd say, a pretty good target for most people with most goals, right?
Yeah, and I think when you start at that point, so the trade-off for the 20k steps was a specific goal. Now, as you taper down, the level of enjoyment or the things that you enjoy can be tapered up if they're different things. So, if you prefer to do hikes at the weekend, then okay, cool, you can do 4, 5, 6k steps a day during the week, and then do a big hike at the weekend. You're going to match out. Or if you prefer doing more gymnasticsy stuff, or body weight stuff, or yoga or whatever, you can kind of taper that back in, to kind of level out your activity somewhere else. It doesn't have to be the things specifically.
And that's exactly how you maintain it, right? That's what lifestyle changes are, that enable you to maintain your gains for life.
Yeah.
And that's not saying that you can't do those things when you're deep into a transformation. But I guess here we're talking about optimum and chasing that extra 1% here, right? Where we want to control as many variables as possible, which is one of the reasons why during a transformation, for example, I'm not a big fan of classes. Not because they're bad for energy expenditure, it's just that it's so hard to track the variable of it, because every class is different. And even from week to week within the same class is different. So that calorie expenditure can become quite variable without you realizing it.
Yeah. But if it's the difference between nothing and something, and
yeah.
But at the end of the day, we are chasing that 1% or that 10%. And yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So we talked about training, activity. What about diet? And we talked about the food habits. But what about let's say someone's got the relationship with food is fine. How would you reverse someone out so that they're in a position where they can pretty much maintain they're about their peak condition or physique?
So for me, it would either go two ways, like it would be a fast or slow reverse diet. I mean, the things that I look for in a slow reverse diet are people that have probably done it previously, done dieting previous, so that they kind of know where their condition should be when they reverse out, or it hasn't been too much of a lifestyle or behavioural change. Whereas the people that have maybe done this for the first time, I'll increase a bit more and specific, but we'll go from there. And then with the fast way, I would increase a little bit more, so they'd get more of an increase in food and more of a luxury with the energy. Slower may be better for people that in terms of accumulating, body mass back on, but it may not suit the individual, because the individual may not be able to cope with, a more of a deficit, because you still are in a deficit even if you are reverse dieting. And it will depend on the individual state that they get into. At the end of the diet will determine how fast I'll bring them back out. If they're really struggling at the end and, you have a feeling that they may need or will use those extra calories regardless if you give them or not, it'd probably be better to get them out fast and get them back into a maintenance.
Yeah, completely agree. And what kind of chunks are you looking at when you're doing the slower approach? Because I mean, the faster approach would just be bringing them back up to maintenance in a few weeks. But in the slower approach, what is it? A couple hundred calories, or how are you gauging?
Yeah, I mean, for females, probably a little bit less, maybe 100, 150, 200. Depends on their expenditure. If they're still doing super loads of cardio and stuff, yeah, maybe on the higher end and what they can handle. The first one will be, tentative, and then if they respond well, some normally drop weight because their expenditure goes up as calories go up, and then you monitor it based on how they're looking. If you want to use metrics, and you can use heart rate variability, all that things like that, to see how their readiness is and see how their sleep quality is. But for guys, maybe 200, 250, 300.
Yeah. And I think another part of the reverse phase is, I actually think it's a lot harder than the actual transformation, because now there's no immediate goal, right? So when you've got like a deadline date, everything's geared towards that goal. But when that's suddenly taken away from you, it becomes so much easier to justify going off plan, right? And I think this is probably an even more critical time to be checking in with your coach, keeping that accountability in check, and making the use of their objective eye as much as possible. So I always say to clients who come to an end of fat loss phase and they're thinking, oh, okay, I'm okay now. And I always say that, okay, it's my duty to make sure that in these next 4 to 8 weeks, you reverse out this properly and you maintain the gains that you spent such amount of time working towards, right?
Yeah. But everyone comes. I've not had a form or a client that has said, I want to get into this shape and I just want to, and then I want to leave it. Everyone says and makes a point of saying that they want to make it sustainable and they want to make it, something that they can do for the rest of their lives. But are the first people that once the 12 week goes up, they think they've mastered it and they think they can go by themselves. But actually, again, like you said, that 4 to 6 weeks post diet, post transformation is the most important part. It's relatively easy to get into shape once you've got the basics down, but being able to increase food intake whilst the goal is not as prominent to you is the biggest task going.
Yeah, 100% agree. And that's the position where you're transferring from, a perhaps unsustainable approach to keeping it going, right? Because during a fat loss phase, it's probably not sustainable if you're doing it in a short amount of time, to making that a sustainable habit.
Yeah.
So it becomes a lifestyle, so that when you reverse properly and you enter your muscle building phase, which you should be doing, that's when, it becomes a lot easier to stay focused in that period.
Yeah. I mean, it's the continuum of dieting. It's like in the context of a time specific or a time restricted goal, is that you will have to, go into a bigger deficit or do more steps than you were probably willing to do, or do more cardio than you might have thought that you needed, because you have a time specific goal, which then means that when you're coming out of that, you have to slide on the continuum and slide on the scale over to a point of like when you take things that were just for that transformation and you take them away, and then you're left with, the sustainable aspects, the principles that we're kind of dialing in and teaching you. And then all you have to do is, if you want to diet again or you build muscle, then you have to add upon those principles.
Yeah, perfect way to put it. And which forms a nice segue into the check-in. So we talked about the importance of checking in and after, but let's rewind right to the beginning of a transformation and let's talk about what makes quality check-in. Because I think, what we do is personalized one-to-one coaching, right? And it all starts with a set of plans that we think are best for the client. But that doesn't really mean, the plans themselves don't really mean anything, right? Without anything. So where the real value of what we do comes into play is the coaching and the checking in and the tweaks that come back off the coaching. So let's talk about what makes a good quality check-in and why it's so important.
Yeah, so for me, a good quality check-in will be, first of all, I like data. So it depends on the client, but if they're willing to give you the data that you want, I mean, for a general population client, not a personal trainer or a physique athlete, the likes of, there will be things that are just necessary. So, maybe girth measurements around the belly button, maybe shoulder width around the arms for guys, your starting weight, your weight on a day-to-day basis, whether you followed that meal plan, yes or no, how many steps did you do daily? What was your weekly target versus what you actually got? Things like, and then moving on to like subjective data. So how are you feeling? How's your libido? How's your appetite? How's your sleep, mood, and just general feel of things, how the week has gone. I think when you have that, then the conversation then becomes live. Before that, it's just a case of your numbers are there, we can make a decision off that, but this decision is not individualized until you get the context of how the week has been. So what have been the pitfalls of the week? Did you go to someone's housewarming on Thursday and you really thought that you really wanted a sausage roll, and you may have had one little sausage roll too many, or was it the fact that you didn't have that many vegetables during your week, so your digestion was poor, and then also you were really, really ravenous during the week, and that sets us up to have a conversation about the fact that you may need more vegetables during your day. What is your digestion like? How many poos are you having a day? What do they look like? And whilst these are funny conversations and some people find them awkward, is that's the art of one-to-one coaching. If people aren't asking you how your digestion is, how your sleep is, all these different factors that make the 10%, the 5% of the transformation, then that coach isn't really as invested in you as you think. And I think getting that much small amount of detail and getting those details and getting the context to the details will then formulate questions to then go forwards.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, without feedback, we can't really do our job. And I personally see a massive correlation between the quality of your check-in and the results you get.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I can always tell who's going to be a good transformation, who's not going to be a good transformation within the first 2-3 weeks of a coaching process, right?
Yeah,
so good transformation gives you exactly what you want on time. Communicates, builds that relationship, builds rapport, gives the feedback that you need, and you could just know they're going to do really well, right?
Yeah, it's that. Have they got their shit in gear? Have they got their stuff in gear to be able to give you on time? Have they got enough? Are they leaving themselves open for interpretation? People won't give you the check-in details that they want because they think you're after something certain, you're after something, or you'll judge them, or you'll ridicule them. But actually, if you give us all, exactly, the more information you get, the better it is. I think for me personally, I give expectations at the beginning, and then that allows you to be on this journey with them, with the expectations on week on week on week, and then the subjective data and the objective data, the conversations that you have, really just that kind of is your train to your destination. It doesn't. everyone has their own little train, and we talk about different things on our way to the end journey. But as you go along, it is an education process as well. So the more questions you ask, the more questions you get answered, and the more you'll learn, and the more you'll be able to appreciate maybe the principles that we're talking about in the reverse dieting. How much you'll actually get from that, and be able to go from there and be kind of self-sufficient with your trainer.
Couldn't have put it better. So now, we covered the check-ins, and I really do hope that any clients who are listening, they take you on board and they use it to improve their own experience in the coaching process, because it's only going to magnify their results and ultimately help them achieve their goals. So let's skip to we've also asked in our Facebook group a client question and answer. So we'll cover 3 questions today, and the first one is by Ashwini Shah, one of your clients, Nathan.
Yeah.
And she's asked, her sister's actually asked, and she's asking on her behalf, is it still good to do hypertrophy training when you're on a cut?
I think it was, for me personally, it's relative to the training age of the individual and how much volume or intensity or training they've had experience to. So, like, for instance, if it was about a female that has had 6 to 12 months experience in training, you could more than likely still get hypertrophy gains or growth in a cut, based on you're still eating an adequate amount of protein, you're training progressively, you've got things like sleep and supplementation in order. There's no reason why you couldn't make gains in hypertrophy whilst in the cut. They may not be optimal compared to chucking 2,000, 3,000 calories down your neck, but it'll still definitely be contributive to your overall goal.
Yeah, and I'd like to answer it from a different perspective, in that I think your goal, your intention in the gym should always be to build muscle. Whether that happens or not because of a calorie deficit, that's another question. But I think you should always go into the gym with the intention to build muscle. And that means training progressively, which is ultimately hypertrophy training. And, pretending that you're not in a calorie deficit almost. That makes sense? Like,
perception is reality.
Exactly. So when you go into if you go into the gym thinking, I'm in a calorie deficit, I've got no calories in me, there's no point in even trying to lift heavy, then you're going to be weak, right? But if you go into the gym with a whole different mindset, and as Nathan said, perception is reality, then who knows, you may build some muscle.
Yeah, and you to be honest, you'll never know until you go through it.
Exactly. You just never know. Okay, the second question from Mitesh Dave, lagging body parts. So he said, for example, imbalance in triceps or quads development from both an aesthetic and strength point of view from one side to another. So he wants to know the best ways to address this. Is it a case of targeting them with extra reps / sets in isolation exercises? Or is this genetics at play? Or is this approach likely to compound the imbalance further?
So genetics.
It's also asked by Josh Bain as well. So
I reckon so. 2 people.
Yeah.
So genetics, I have no clue. Whether that's going to play a role for some people. Lever lengths, biomechanics will make it harder for you to hit certain muscles in certain exercises. Let's give an example of a squat. Chinese weightlifter does a squat, gets quite a lot of quad in their squat. Someone else does a squat with long femurs, they're not going to get much quad. So see, and look at your quads. So I mean, and that's the reality in terms of biomechanics of that muscle. So you would just have to choose different exercises related to your biomechanics. Doing a quad extension or something with the heels elevated. But I think the overall concept would be to can you fire it? Can you contract that muscle? Can you load it effectively? Can you progress the exercise in it? Are you stable enough? And then from there onwards, can you execute the normal aspects of hypertrophy training, progressive overload with perfect form, and then add in reps and sets on a week-to-week basis.
What about side to side? So imbalancing, say your right side is bigger than your left side. What's your thoughts on that? Trying to do more here.
I think there will obviously the goal with that type of stuff would be to match your weaker side. So if you want things to be balanced, if there is a certain balance, I mean, I don't believe that you will ever be balanced between sides, but aesthetically, you don't want the stronger side to outgrow your weaker side. Look at my left calf versus my right calf based on my previous injury. If I kept loading my left calf, which is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, my right one's never going to catch up. So doing reps or doing exercises to the weaker side will then make up for that. I think generally there's a correlation between aesthetics and strength in that area, albeit for stability reasons, injury, or something else. There'll always be
there'll always be an imbalance, right?
There'll always be
posturally driven, right?
Yeah.
From say you're right-handed, you're going to be using the right hand more, no matter what.
Yeah, you can't open the door with your right hand the same amount as door with your left hand. It's just unattainable.
Yeah, so I've always said to clients that just match the weaker side, and the rest will kind of take care of itself. But
I think there's a big stigma is that if you're not balanced, you're going to be in pain or you're going to get injured, and that actually there's no correlation. I mean, there's hardly any correlation between first of all posture and pain. There's hardly any correlation between that. And then in terms of imbalances between the side, the only real issues you run into is that you're loading one side more, and then you may come into some issues because of the amount of loading going through joints. But in terms of one side being smaller than the other, you're not going to have there's no correlation between that and injuries for sure.
Got it. Okay, on to the last question by he's also one of your clients, John Nixon. He said, when time is really short, like when you've got a newborn and fat loss is still a priority, are you better off A, gunning it with as low calories as you can stand and keeping strength training as a priority, or B, maintaining some carbs, more calories in the diet, prioritize HIIT and just deal with the fact that some muscle will go and or you won't gain any, but a longer term you can bulk later? So I think he's asking, should you if you still want to lose body fat, should you either go really hard on calories and just focus on weight training, or should you keep a little bit more calories but add more cardio in?
So when you have a newborn, I think first of all, what are your priorities when you've got a baby?
Yeah, so I think that's what he's saying. So he's saying you've got very minimal time. If you are going to do something, what would you do?
It's just I'd go hard on the calories and do as much weight training as your time or your newborn allows. I think there's going to be a benefit to probably eating less, and that's going to be less preparation time, more focus on the things that you're actually supposed to be doing, whether that's work or the newborn. You could argue and say that you're going to get less energy for that, but if you want to do it over a short period of time, there has to be a big energy expenditure, and the best way to get that would be from food or less food.
Completely agree. I'm on the same boat. I'd say go hard on the food and weight train where you can.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's today's client question and answer done. I'd like to finish off putting you on the spot and ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
What are the top 3 tips you give to clients who want to transform their body?
I would say that my first one is the expectations that you place on yourself probably need to be more than they currently are. And say that you up your expectations to the level of expectations that I have of you. So we're not batting off the same. We're batting off this or singing off the same hymn sheet in terms of fat loss goals or weekly weight loss per week. My second one would be tips for fat loss. Would definitely be consider when you're on low calories to go time restricted eating. So you spend more time during the day making a buffer for your food in the afternoon when you're definitely for females and people that are on lower calories. And then my last one bit would be just to get as much steps in as physically possible. 3-5 stops before you get off the train. If you're getting off at Bank Station, get off at Chancery Lane beforehand, which is an extra 2,500 steps, and making that a point and making that a priority. That's what I'd say.
Perfect. What are you working on right now with yourself in terms of your physique?
For me, I am just got some Dutch test back, which is looking...
What, sorry?
Dutch test.
Dutch.
So Dutch test is basically looking at your hormonal profiles for urine. It looks at cortisol, looks at testosterone, estrogen, and basically your adrenal axis, so a bit more in depth into your hormones and stuff like that. So just got that back, and I'll be working on the things to get that better, because there's some things that are completely out of whack, if you want to call that. So for me, it's health is a priority. I recently got better at sleep. I know it sounds a bit weird because I'm coaching people, but like you said at the beginning, when you take other things as priority, I kind of regained sleep as a priority and nailing that, making sure I'm getting good quality cycles, and then just being as active as possible with steps. I really enjoy walking, so that's for me.
So you're in a kind of a health phase at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a life phase, which is just like doing what I can whilst the rest of my life is going.
Yeah. And what are you working on in your life then?
Oh, just being the best PT and being the best online trainer I can be. And trying to get a balance between doing things outside of personal training and outside of fitness, and getting the stuff that is in fitness as well.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Yeah,
perfect. Have you got anything else to add? You like to give to your clients and our listeners here?
No, I think that those that are listening, stick to your diet. And I'll check in with you on Monday and Thursday.
Great. And on that note, if you've enjoyed today's episode with Nathan, aka the Hitman, please share with your family and friends, hit subscribe and leave a positive review. For more information, please follow us at rnt_fitness or visit www.rntfitness.co.uk for more education and weekly blogs. Thanks for listening.